Okay, hey, I think as far as I'm tracking, it's 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And so this was the kickoff of a series of town hall meetings that we've been conducting using this new forum. So to everybody out there that are monitoring the YouTube live session today, again, for those that I've not met personally, my name's Jeff Milhorn. I'm your division commander. For those that are monitoring from across the North Atlantic Division of, area of operation. It's funny, I put I had a request, somebody had asked, hey, do you really have a plant in your office and how you doing it, maintaining it? For those that hadn't heard this story, my wife had given me a plant many, many years ago. I think it was in 1997. And she said, hey, just use this as a little device to maintain balance within your life. Are you in fact taking care of something small, keeping you focused on not only the larger details and the strategic aspect of things, but also bringing you back to the smaller details, and because little things matter. And so this was her way in 1997 of presenting me with a plan. I asked for a cactus, and I got something that actually required work to be taken care of, for those that had asked about it. And since then, I've had a plan in my office, and I have tried my damnedest to keep these things alive. And I think it's doing actually pretty good. I'm pretty pleased with it. Folks were laughing when I carried this into the room. And though I just share that story with you because it's something that I continually use no matter where I'm at. Nothing like having something live in your office and green and producing something good to include the oxygen coming out of it to make your day a little bit brighter. Hey, one of the things I want to there's several things I want to talk about today. And I know that we have a live chat session also being monitored. I've got a lot of questions that I'd like to address to the masses today. I've got my experts in the room with me as well. So I just extend my sincerest thanks to safety and HR and Office of Counsel for joining me here today. But I'll also give you my off-cuff response to some of the questions that I've received. A couple things that I do want to address with all of you. We're in a substantial transition period, again, as we always are during every summer, but pretty substantial this year. This will be my last town hall with the North Atlantic Division. For those that weren't tracking, I will transition on July 15th with Brigadier General Tom Tigner from the Pacific Ocean Division. And Tom will come in and assume command of the North Atlantic Division, and then I'll head down the street to Washington, D.C. to Headquarters USACE to assume responsibility as the Deputy Commanding General for military and international operations, as well as serve as the Deputy Chief of Engineers on behalf of the Corps. So I share that with all of you because I'm excited to continue to serve with and for all of you, just in a different capacity. And I will do what I can to influence changes that we all requested occur, even in this seat that I'm in today, moving forward, certainly in support of the entire enterprise. Along with my transition, we also have New York District's transition with Colonel Tom Asbury handing the reins off to Colonel Matt Lozado, taking place, I believe, on June 25th. And then I've got shortly right after that, the Europe District, Colonel John Baker will transition with Colonel Pat Dagan on June 30th. I'll participate live here locally in New York to preside over the change of command in the New York District. I will virtually conduct the ceremony in support of Europe District on the 30th of June, and then move in person up to New England, where I will also oversee the change between Colonel Bill Condi and Colonel John Adelano on July 8th, followed by a retirement ceremony on behalf of Colonel Bill Condi. So again, just a lot of change going on there, as we also acknowledge that there are numerous other civilian changes across the organization, but I highlight the command changes for you just for your own awareness. One thing I do also want to note with the transitions and where we are in the summer, before I go into the details of the current conditions that we're all operating in or under, this is the we're starting to, I think actually, if we haven't crossed the threshold of summer, we soon will. But this is a peak season for most of folks to start taking some leave. And though I recognize the current conditions that we're all operating on, what I don't want to find out is that we're delaying or holding off on taking leave when, no kidding, this is the time to do so. Certainly, we know how important the critical period of the end of the fiscal year is in September, and that often holds a lot of us from doing some of that. It constrains some of our travel, even under the current pandemic conditions. But it should not. I would ask folks not to refrain from taking personal leave at this point in time. Certainly, in the months of June, July, and August, as we have this time to spend with families. And I do acknowledge the pandemic situation of travel. But we're starting to see all of the responsible transitions take place across the area. We're seeing the gating criteria to include here in New York City, the epicenter, approaching phase 2, starting on Monday, this next week on the 22nd, where you'll see things like hair and nail salons open back up again on an appointment basis, which is a big milestone here in one of the largest cities in the United States. So again, I'm just encouraging folks to don't wait. I've heard the stress and strain even that telework can create because it's a relatively new environment for most folks. And we recognize if you're taking care of kids and elderly care, that there is a little bit more stress and strain on the everyday life. And so if you need to, take the leave and take and focus on those things that are most important to you, which ought to be your families. So hey, I failed to start like I always do, which is to open with thank you, an open word of thank you to all of you for what you do. Even my travel has been constrained over these last few months. And though I started, I think, communicating with a biweekly letter, or at least a biweekly opportunity for a town hall offset since March 13th, I recognize that many of us have not been able to get out and about, and to include even out to visit the job sites. We're starting to see exceptions to policy, which I'm approving daily now, on folks getting out and doing more and more mission critical support to all of our stakeholders. And so I ask, hey, keep those coming my way, because we recognize, though, absolutely your health and welfare is number one. We will make sure that we're doing right by all of you and your family, certainly. We will protect your health as best we possibly can, given the circumstances, but also balance the needs and the requirements of the mission support that are out there in support of so many other stakeholders. And again, I'm starting to see that pick up as well. One thing also upon us with the summer, and what we've seen a little bit of a postponement and delay, and I thought it was important to announce here, if you weren't tracking, we have the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey coming around again. And traditionally it starts in June and it carries for about 4 to 6 weeks,
yes,
right?
14 July until 25 August.
Yeah, so 14 July is when it's going to open up this year. And for those of you last year, and I had to pull the stats because I wanted to know specifically, where last year the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers response rate to the entire workforce, because this is coming out this year to everybody, to include all of our foreign nationals that are part of our organization. They will now also get an opportunity to contribute. But last year alone, though the Department of the Army response rate was 44%, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers response rate was 68.5%. And really what's heartwarming to me was the North Atlantic region's response rate was 71.8%. So nearly 72% of our workforce responded. And that is just critically important because we truly want to hear from you. And though I got it, we can always pick apart a survey or a tool or an instrument and say, hey, what's this really doing for us? I'll tell you what it's doing. It's allowing us and enabling us to make changes. And though we may develop a list internal to each of the districts to work off, we're chipping away at those things. But we still have to hear from you to determine whether or not those changes are taking place. And if they are, then what's next in line? What's next? What do we next need to improve upon? So I want to hear from you. And last year, I just go through this. Baltimore, 76.5% response rate. Incredible. 67.7% from Europe. 67.7% from New England. 68.7% from New York. 71.3% response from Norfolk, 73% from Philly. And then Washington Aqueduct even rating at 68.3, which beat the USACE rate. Most importantly and most impressively, and I'm putting the mark on the wall, 85.4% here at the North Atlantic Division headquarters. And we do strive to be world-class places to work, or best places to work. And we want to share those results with others and invite them to join us. And as we've seen over these last few months, what an incredible opportunity to come work for a world-class organization such as the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So again, I invite all of you to participate when we open that window up again on July 14th. Hey, as summer rolls around again, guess what else comes around? Hurricane season. And so I think as all are tracking hurricane season within the North American region runs from June until November. And sadly, what we tend to see on the East Coast and Eastern Seaboard of the United States is most of those storms tend to hit the most voracious storms that we've seen over the course of the history have hit largely in the August, September, October timeframe. And so I'll tell you, we've been leaning forward in our readiness and preparation for that, even under the pandemic conditions that we're still operating in. That was one of the questions that I saw from the masses out there in terms of, hey, what are we doing to prepare ourselves, even in case of a hurricane, under these conditions? And it's having done tabletop exercises with our FEMA partners, the Federal Emergency Management Agencies, the regional administrators from FEMA Region 1, 2, and 3, talking to them about, hey, how are we identifying those that are most critical in our response during a hurricane, such as PRTs, housing, temp power, debris teams that we would have to provide in support of? Are we going back and meeting with those team members and determining, hey, are you critically vulnerable during this time frame because of the pandemic situations? Is it an age? Is it because of your age, or maybe whom you're living with at home? Or maybe it's you're predisposed to other health conditions that we need to be aware of that are in line with CDC guidance and others as we look to protecting our workforce, even during something as extreme as a hurricane response. Hey, we're doing that. We've done that. I've asked the supervisors and the commanders to go back and determine and scrutinize by name rosters of who would be responding. And then how can we use and be creative in our response to include telework, alternative work locations, alternative sites where we can still provide that support, but just in a different way than we've done it before. Or if there are other volunteers out there that said, hey, send me, I'm willing to go, that they've nominated themselves and that you know who they are, and that we're starting to conduct that preliminary training to make sure that those teams are ready during this time of need. So we're in our defensive crouch again. We're swiveling in our chairs, looking in the direction what might come our way, depending on what the conditions are. And I share that with you because, again, it is such a unique time in the environment in the United States and in the world, across the world as a whole, given the global pandemic that we're still operating in, and we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But we do have an insurance policy in terms of the facilities that your Corps of Engineers have built over the course of the last few weeks. Which brings me to another point, and I want to address this with regards to the civil unrest associated with acts of violence, be they police violence, riots, and sadly looting violence and things that have occurred as a result of public outcry based on the conditions that we have. We have had and continue to have discrimination practices across the United States, and we recognize that, and we have to look it into the face, and we have to address it daily. You have to have conversations. You have to listen to your workforce. Let me be the first one to say, in charge as the senior commander of the North Atlantic Division for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, we will not tolerate discrimination within our ranks. We don't discriminate against race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation. We don't tolerate it, nor do we tolerate acts of violence. And it doesn't matter what the violence is. we take action when we see it, and we have got to intervene. And I'm asking for the face-to-face engagements and for all of you to listen and to do your part to emulate that behavior that we want all to share. Dignity and respect for everybody within our ranks. It does not matter whom you are. We are better for the diversity within our organization. And we still have strides to make ourselves even more diverse than where we are today. There's something that I wanted to read to you. I think I sent a message out to the workforce. And if you're not receiving this and you're not on the DLL all division and district employees, you got to get on that distro list. Because I've been sending out notes every 2 weeks. I'm questioning whether or not 3,600 employees are actually reading what I'm getting. I do get feedback every once in a while, and I do appreciate it. I'm not asking for it, but I certainly want to make sure that you're hearing what I'm personally pinning with the assistance of my technical experts. Certainly, if there are things that you are asking questions about that I can bring to bear. But there's something that was very meaningful to me. I act as a senior responsible officer for our local community here at Fort Hamilton. And I coordinate with my senior commander, who is Lieutenant General Darrell Williams, the West Point Superintendent, the U.S. Military Academy. And the 60th superintendent penned this a few weeks back, leading up to the most recent graduation ceremony at West Point. And I share this with you all openly. And I actually gave and annotated and gave him credit for his comments because I included that in my last letter to the workforce at just below my signature block. And I ask that you do consider these. Consider how your words, actions, and attitudes impact other people. Are you building up others and making them feel valued? Are you strengthening trust within the team? Are you extending forgiveness and actively listening to other points of view? Are you inspiring others to greatness? If so, encourage others to do the same. If not, then choose to improve immediately. Muster the moral courage necessary to confront and solve problems with effective, honest, and empathetic dialogue that seeks solutions rather than sowing seeds of division and disunity. Also, I went on to acknowledge an example again, and you all have heard me say from the plant that's sitting on the table in front of me today to the comments that I often will reflect back on my own confidant, my wife, Debbie, who some of you have never had the opportunity to meet, and I'm sorry that you haven't, because she's an incredible person. And I confide in her, and I listen to what she tells me. And there's things that she'll remind me of, whether it's the little things in life that are most important, or things that she'll often say, reminding me. And these are often quoted from Mother Teresa and Maya, forgive me, Angelo, who is awesome. She's just got some awesome quotes. You know, and we often say this in the military. You know, it's not so much what you say, it's what you do. And what Debbie will add on to that, and she goes, it's not also what you say and what you do, but it's more importantly sometimes of how you make people feel. How are they valued? How do you put your arms around them and make them feel a part of the family and actually take time to look them in the eye and have honest conversations? Going back to discriminatory practices, racial slurs, things that people say that hurt people's feelings and that have got to be, one, first, intolerant, and that you do something about it to correct that behavior. But most importantly, to put and embrace your arms around people and truly integrate them into your team, into your families. Because again, I go back to the diversity of our organization is our strength. And we will lead the way. We have a responsibility as part of the Department of the Army, certainly. We lead by example in our attributes and our values. And again, it's incumbent upon each and every one of us to do so. So I take that honestly, very seriously, and I hold everybody accountable to the same within the organizations that I'm responsible for. I have to. It's my responsibility to serve with and for every one of you. All right. So I do want to continue because there's so much I want to talk about, and I know this is my last town hall. But again, I'll offer opportunity. I know I've got Miss Jen Gunn, my PAO, over my shoulder. She's watching some of the comments in the chat box. But Jen, if I don't address some of the things that I've got a list of already, please let me know what those are. So, all right, let me go to some of the questions that I've received. And then I'm going to kind of round out with some reflections over my last nearly 2 years of command of the North Atlantic Division, if that's okay. Because though I will probably send out one more letter to everybody to say thank you for what you do, nothing I don't think is as important as being able to communicate that off script to everybody, to share my insights and my perspectives from what I've viewed over the last nearly 24 months. First and foremost, let me go to the telework policy, because we're still in a max telework posture today. And I will tell you, there were some naysayers out there. I'm not one of them. I'm just saying there were some naysayers questioning whether or not under these conditions that we would be able to continue to maintain the pace in terms of our program delivery, our partnerships, our communication with the workforce. And I'm telling you, you all have done an incredible job. Phenomenal. You have become more innovative, more creative with the way we deliver on the programs. And yet there's still some of you saying, hey, I got to come in and put my hands on some of this, and in doing so, we have our responsibilities to ensure that we're bringing you in safely and that the spaces are safe for you to operate in. But we're doing those things, and we'll share those. And it's not only what we're doing, the core, it's also what GSA is doing. It's also what mass transit is doing. The cities, the states that we're operating in that are also taking this very seriously and very deliberately, I might say, with regards to, again, the gating criteria and the CDC guidance that we're all following to make sure that it's safe to come back to. And you don't have to look very far other than CNN and Fox and MSNBC and BBC World and BBC America to look at, to see what's going on across the country. In some places, when they're not taking it very seriously, you're starting to see a spike of cases. And then people are recoiling and saying, oh, we got to be a little bit more deliberate. It's harder to kind of get it back into the box if you don't be deliberate in your actions being taken. And so I can convey to you that we're doing exactly that. And in fact, we're lagging oftentimes the gating criteria of the cities and the states that we're operating in to make sure that we're going to protect all of you and bring you back safely. And I'm not saying that we're bringing everybody back. We are going to leverage this crisis. And I don't mean to be pejorative when I say don't take it, or don't forget to take advantage of a good crisis. Crises are not good, but they are when you're making changes that need to change. So how do you leverage the changes that we've experienced and do things differently in the future? So I share that with you because we're considering all of that to include our business practices, our leases, and things that we look toward the future. Do we reduce the footprints? Do we expand telework? Do we look at alternative work locations for the safety, the health, and protection of our workforce? And we're looking at all of those things. And that dialogue is occurring every day, and it's becoming richer as we involve more and more of you and your feedback, of which we entertain daily. And look forward to hearing from you if you feel that we're not addressing those concerns. Some of the questions I heard about on the IT structure. To continue to maintain even max telework, we've had to make significant changes across our infrastructure, our IT infrastructure. And I think you all saw that. And I mentioned this in the previous town hall, and I've mentioned it even in the letters that I've sent out to all of you before, that we didn't do so well coming out of the gates, even though we did not fully understand or anticipate what might happen. But I will tell you, within days, within hours and days, not weeks, the IT infrastructure was strengthened and reinforced and actually doubled down on from ACIT and our G6 CIO team. And again, though we don't have all the services or all the applications that we might be able to use, there was a question of, hey, can we integrate Zoom? Well, Zoom right now is kind of outside of the DoD architecture, so we're using things like Microsoft Teams that can be encrypted. We're using WebEx and others. Again, there's a variety of different software development out there. And I will tell you, even those that we're using we're starting to see multiple versions and upgrades occurring because they realize, hey, in order for us to continue to do what we need to do, we need to improve upon these capabilities. And though we also have a responsibility to defend our network and to make sure that we don't completely open it up to others that would try to do nefarious things that would be disruptive to what we're trying to achieve. So we'll maintain that balance of operating and defending the network as we go forward, but still improving and in integrating those lessons learned moving forward. So I share that with you because, yes, we recognize IT needs to be invested in, and those are some decisions that are carrying around not only just within the Corps of Engineers, but a lot of our stakeholders and partners that we operate with routinely. There was a question about predictable, realistic workload. How do we maintain consistency even during a crisis? Some had made mention that we feel like we're constantly in a state of crisis. We're constantly in a state of emergency. And I can't refute that, certainly looking back from March 13th forward in the conditions that we're still operating in. And as I made mention to you, let's throw a hurricane in. Let's throw a wildfire that are already starting to spike on the West Coast, typhoons in the Pacific, earthquakes that could occur, numerous other humanitarian assistance disaster responses that, if not needed here on our own homeland, may be requested of us in other nations, to include our NATO allies and partners in other countries in Europe and Africa. We can anticipate those requests for assistance. And guess what? In times of need, we will respond, but we'll do so in a very deliberate fashion to protect all of you moving forward. But again, how do we maintain some level of predictability during times when you know that our projects are constrained by budgets that are approved through a very deliberate congressional process, Department of Defense and Congress, 2808 deferments that many of you saw, many of which we didn't see were going to occur last year, that may in fact occur again this year. And the implications, even by our own administration, when you see foreign policy change. Again, you go to what has recently been announced, reference Europe, and the possibility of troop movements and populations being reduced in various countries. Those are decisions that are not ours to make, but certainly as we see these things play out, they have implications on the workforce, our products, the program delivery and projects moving forward. And yet we have our responsibility to kind of lift our headlights up and do our best to anticipate when those things might occur, how rapidly they might occur, and respond in kind so that we continue to, first and foremost, take care of our people, deliver on the programs that we're held accountable to, keep our partners and the communications going so that we're able to keep our stakeholders and partners informed and work with them through whatever crisis might come, or just the traditional mode of operating even in this current environment. So yes, we're looking at all of that. We have a variety of different governance meetings, the Regional Management Board, co-chaired by both of our SESs, Ms. Baker, Mr. Koenig, and with participation from all of your districts and the senior leaders, the DPMs. I'm confident that we're trying to look forward, but even under normal conditions, it's difficult to have a picture out to 2 years. And right now we have things that are right here in our face today that are impacting our ability to do some of the work that we need to do. But we're working through it. And we will do our best through our communications meetings, through letters, through forums like this, through those at the district level across the region and across the enterprise for that matter, to share what is going on, to predict what we're doing over the next 6, 12, maybe out to 24 months, and things that you all can anticipate that will have an impact on your ability to do your jobs. So we are looking at all of that, and I wanted to share that with you as well. It comes back to the pandemic, and I see a little bit of anxiety, some fear, which I think is natural during the current circumstances. We are seeing things improve all over the place, especially across this region alone, where almost all of our districts are or soon to enter phase 2 gating criteria, where every one of your commanders back briefed me on their plans to responsibly transition. I'm not saying 100% return. I'm not saying everybody's coming back or that we're demanding that we will by a certain date be fully back in the saddle the way it was back in February. I don't think we will ever return to that period of normalcy without taking into consideration certainly your individual needs, of which every supervisor that is monitoring this transmission today have a responsibility to conduct face-to-face engagements with all of those whom you're responsible for to understand their individual situations. What is your home life like? Where are your children in these circumstances? Elderly care, your own health. And I'm not asking you to disclose or compromise personal information that can be identifiable back to an individual employee. But you have got to understand your workforce, and you've got to take care of them as best you can with the conditions and the facts that you know. And if there are questions or concerns, then you've got to bring those. And if I'm an employee and I have a situation, I would feel the need to show you the documentation, to show you that, yes, this is what's going on. And I want to make sure that you're aware of it as to the supervisors. And so that they can make those decisions on your behalf. And that we're making those decisions on the whole of the organization. Because again, absolutely, number one priority to take care of the workforce, but we are also monitoring the mission. People always, absolutely. Mission first, people always. You know, that's what we do. And we're going to be responsive to everybody's needs. Okay, so let me go down the line. There is a question, again, alternative care facilities. Hey, we've done so well across the nation and within this region alone. Are they going to continue to be maintained? Those are state decisions, because all those facilities, ladies and gentlemen, when we finished either contracting them ourselves, and I hats off to the contracting team out there. We had several awardees for excellence most recently that I should recognize. I think Mr. Helmer, Mr. Moy, and Master Sergeant Watt recently acknowledged by the contracting community for the tremendous efforts most recently. But what's going to happen? We don't know, because we turn those facilities over. And the states have decisions that they have to make as they continue to monitor the health of the entire population. And if we start to see, even in the fall, a transition or a spike in COVID virus again, actions will have to be taken. And we will be responsive to need, because we will take that third stool of facilities, if you will, site locations, right out from underneath the out of the equation, so that we can allow the states and the other health and human service community experts to then identify how they're going to staff and equip those sites. Right now, we've got an insurance policy in place across our region, because we've got these sites that are really still there, and they're on standby mode to be outfitted with equipment and with people. Again, state decisions to be made. And if the Department of Defense is called upon to support them again, I'm confident that they will also respond through the inquiry, through the requests that the states will ask of the national and the federal government in response. But those are things that we'll continue to look forward and anticipate. And we'll continue to collaborate with all of our centers of expertise to include Huntsville and designs that we've come up with that have been modified from the very beginning to the very end, that we've learned and integrated those lessons all along. And that now we have that playbook up on the shelf, ready to go again in the time of need. Let me go to command responsibilities for communication. You know, I always talk about it. And one card that I did write, aside from bringing in the list of questions that I have from the workforce, you know, I wrote down people. You know, this was the only thing I had on the card. There's one thing left on the back, and I'll share that on the back side. You know, people, programs, partnerships, and communication. And our ability to communicate with all of you frequently and to our stakeholders to make sure that we understand the dynamics of the environments that we're operating in. We understand the implications that might be impacting our contractors and subcontractors and supply chain management. And that could be not only here in the United States, but across multiple countries, across Europe and Africa right now, of which have similar problems, and many of which have imposed restrictions that still exist, to include implications for PCSs for all of our people, both in uniform and out of uniform. Quarantine requirements. Heck, even here in the United States, people don't like to see New York, New Jersey, or Connecticut license plates coming into their states because they're afraid you're going to bring something in from outside where they felt that they were in a protective bubble. Those quarantine requirements still exist. Whether you're going to Hawaii, Germany, we're starting to see nations in Europe, for example, lower their border restrictions. So people that already live and work in Europe are able to travel. But if there's need, I'm still having exceptions come to me so that I can authorize you to go out and perform those critical mission assignments. And I am not putting any additional restrictions on you. It ain't a 20-question ask. If I have a commander from any of the districts asking for something, I'm supportive of their needs. Now, if I see something that may be less critical or that I've seen a previous precedent set somewhere else that we don't want to generate, I'll look at that a little bit more critically. But most recently, 99% of anything I've seen come across my test has been approved because I recognize how important it is to, one, return to some sense of normalcy, take care of all of you in the process, and then also make sure that we're complying with some of the restrictions that still exist out there. And that if I have the authority to bypass those, that I'm communicating with those to make sure that they understand why I'm doing so. Let me go to a couple other questions that I had on here. And I think that's most important to all of you. I don't know that you're aware of our employee assistance program. And I do want to acknowledge Ms. Bernadette McSweeney up front. She is the North Atlantic Division EAP lead. Okay, but each of you also have them at each of your districts. And if there is a time of need, if you are not feeling comfortable or you've not been able to communicate with your supervisors, or you feel that they're not listening and you haven't exercised maybe an open door policy with senior supervisors, but I offer the tools that they offer: counseling, financial, legal consultation, assistance programs, and numerous online tools that are available to you. Please reach out to them if you feel uncomfortable doing in any other means, or if you feel that you're not having your needs addressed. Personally, I would go back to the supervisor. And if you don't feel your supervisor is answering those questions, I would go back to your supervisor's supervisor to address those same questions. I will listen, and I am listening to what's coming offline. And I'm listening to all the employees, bargaining units included. And I'm looking and we're reshaping bargaining unit agreements moving forward as we look at all the conditions that we face going into the future. So I wanted to make sure that that was addressed. Let me ask, there are a couple other questions that I had here. Current rules for PCS and TDY. I know I mentioned that previously. And if for those of you who are tracking, the Department of Defense stop move orders essentially expire on the 30th of June. Now, that does not mean that there's freedom of movement without still some of the exceptions to policies that still have to be granted. As I go back to some of those quarantine requirements are still in place. My own son, Captain Jeff Chase Milhorn, is about to PCS from Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri to Hawaii. And he's got a 14-day hotel quarantine waiting on him. And that's not something that he's probably going to enjoy. But I would anticipate that that's still the case even in Europe today. And that unless you have quarters that you can immediately move to, and I think we're working through that, and a lot of these exceptions are being pursued so that we're taking care of families, service members, DA, civilians, all of us, to make sure that we're appropriately guarding the population that is being protected as we bring new people in, as well as protecting you in place so that you can essentially acclimate to the region that you're moving to and take care of you and your family as you transition. But those things are still out there, and I want to make sure that you're aware of them. And I think I've got Miss Dawn Clapsey here, that if there's anything that you think I need to reiterate there, Dawn, I open that up to you to share with everybody.
Sir, you're right on target.
Okay. I do, while I've got my experts in the room, and before I do ask Jen if there's anything else that I might not have touched upon, I'm not going to go to as many questions as I had before because I do want to add some reflections, if you will, if you all would allow me, because this will be my last face-to-face engagement with many of you that are monitoring today, with exception to maybe a YouTube live change of command on July 15th, which you can monitor there too, and some of which I'll probably repeat. But again, to safety. And Greg, if you would, please, is there anything that I need to reiterate in terms of our transitions that you're starting to see occur across the region in terms of the efforts that we put in? I think you brought an example. I've got an example of my mask. It's right here. So as I transit through spaces where we're not able to maintain 6-foot compliance, even in vehicle support when we're all corralled, sometimes you got to put these on, maintain that social distancing in line with the CDC guidance that is still being published and adhered to largely. And though you may find that not everybody's complying, any thoughts that you'd like to share with everybody while I've got you in the room?
No. So, well, actually, the answer is yes. So, big picture stuff. Each of the respective districts already have their reconstitution plans that have been back briefed to the CG. Most of our safety offices, supervision, employees, everybody should be looped in as to what they say. Basically, it's foundationally based in, all right, we're going to execute max telework until we start getting go-aheads from states and local authorities. And then once we start returning individuals to the workplace, it's predicated on the ability to maintain social distance. And how we've been able to accommodate that. One is obviously individuals who are capable of working at home. We're going to continue to do that. Individuals that are required to come into work, we've rearranged workstations. We've installed barriers in respective locations. We've enhanced cleaning and disinfection protocols. We've put out educational campaigns, signage in all of our facilities. The big thing, and this is the most difficult thing for everybody, is you on the individual basis are your own biggest advocate. You are responsible for adhering to this new normal. And I know that it's all super contrary to how we've been socialized to interact, but 6 foot, you need to maintain 6 foot. And if you are incapable of maintaining 6 foot, it's required. Beyond that, I trust everybody to be respectful to each other and just practice diligence on a consistent basis. If you do have any residual concerns where how things are being handled at a local level, engage your safety office, engage your supervisor first, then your safety office. All these things are solvable. There's a suite of solutions to the majority of these issues, and they affect every workplace in America. There is a solution, and we can all come back to work safely. Over.
All right. No, hey, Greg, thank you. And as I reflect on that, and I think about even my own headquarters here, I talked about the gating criteria as we start to see New York City and the 5 boroughs and where all of our folks live, and whether they work here or they're coming and migrating in from New Jersey or other surrounding states. We are having to take it a little bit slower because we've got a construction project that's still ongoing in our other building. I'm proud of finally getting the money to get that thing fixed. It should have been fixed years ago, but it's still taking us until mid-July to finish out the heating and cooling and the testing and balancing of a facility that should have been corrected many years ago in my eyes. But because of that, I can't have one complete wing shut down and expect to compress everybody in. So we are being a little bit more deliberate as we bring folks back. And when the space is back, we open back up. We're certainly going to avail that to everybody and make sure they're aware. And then certainly all the precautions that Greg made mention of are also being exercised here to include issuance of the face coverings that we have available for all of our employees, and the sanitation requirements that will also be reinforced throughout. So with that, I've got Ms. Maureen, our Office of Counsel here, and Maureen, before I go or defer to any questions that are online, anything that you think that needs to be added today?
No, sir, whatever you said has been absolutely correct. And the only thing I can mention is, Office of Counsel, both here and in the districts, we will support in any questions that are asked regarding issues in this trying time. Over.
Okay, so Jen, I'll kind of go to you because you've been monitoring the live chat, and I'm kind of looking for a sweet spot of overlapping our questions. Yes. So what's out there that I can address?
So there's one question about the leave plans that were affected by COVID, and if there are any plans to allow leave to be carried forward into 2021. I can take this.
Okay, so I'll come back to Don, but I know I've had this question asked several times, and so I've asked the same thing in terms of who ultimately has the authority to make those decisions. And quite honestly, as I understand that, that's a congressional ask to be able to move across the end of the calendar year from 2020 into 2021. And so though I recognize, folks have kind of held back on some taking leave. And that's why I brought that up early on, was like, take leave now. Don't wait. Don't hold it. Don't harvest it and then expect that it's going to carry over. And though OPM is aware of these same asks, and though they may be pursuing a congressional change or request, I don't know that that may actually be approved. So in the meantime, we're 6 months out from that time frame, and I'm asking folks, we're mid-year. Do not wait to hold on to your leave. Take it while you can. So let me go back to Ms. Clapson.
Sir, that's exactly what I was going to say. There's been dialogue March and April timeframe that the Department of the Army has generated with DOD to see if we would possibly get some relief or congressional change,
Just timed
but
out,
nothing to date.
or is it? Okay, I'm sorry. It seemed like okay.
So General Milhorn is giving good advice. Start using your leave, plan accordingly. And if anything changes within the next couple of weeks, we'll certainly share that with the commanders over.
Okay. Was there anything on?
Sure, we do have one question that came from two different people. They are PCSing to a state that's not on Headquarters Department of Army's green list after the June 30th deadline. If it's after then, can they still PCS without an ETP and take leave?
Okay, so again, for the majority that may not be familiar, we've got a list the Department of Defense recognizes that is actually state, I think, informed, and the national government has then recognized that these states are green states based on their current circumstances, and that's because the states have said we have not yet hit our peak, or we're concerned about what might still be coming. I can look, if I recall, even within our own region, I believe, surprisingly, I think New Hampshire and Vermont were on the no PCS or were not considered green states at the time, even though from the New England's perspective, and even those states, they have had minimal impact from the pandemic. But I'll go to Don to see if there's anything that's been published that says you can or you cannot PCS to those. And though, again, there's always an exception of policy that can be granted and that we will pursue, especially with regard to hardship, financial, families, things that we need to take into consideration. But most importantly, we want to make sure that the environment that you're going to is not going to put you at significant risk as well. So come back to that, because I don't know. I mean, quite honestly, up front, I'm not sure if I know I can go to we can request an exception of policy, but in terms of it being a flat out denial, I've not seen that yet. Any thoughts there?
No, sir, the advice that I've seen, it's the kind of monitor through the G3 and through the RM shop here, is that you should basically discuss it with your supervisor, and if an exception is required, then you need to secure that exception. So other than that, it's better that we know in advance where they might be traveling to in order to plan accordingly.
Okay.
Because if the guidance isn't clear necessarily whether or not you're prohibited from going or not.
So what we'll do is, again, to that though, I'm all about the facts. So, and I don't like hearsay or what we think and not know without having read what the requirement is. What we'll make sure today at the conclusion of this is send that out to the commands and make sure that that's distributed across the workforce so that you all understand what those green states mean and the implications for those that are not on that list. So more to follow. All right, so hey, forgive me, I'm going to turn because I'm about 10 minutes out, and really I want to go back and kind of reflect on my last 2 years to close by first and foremost, as I always do, and as I started to say, thank you all. It's been a tremendous enjoyment for myself, my family, to spend time with the North Atlantic Division. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to continue to influence outcomes as best I can within the Corps on your behalf. I serve with and for, as I said, all of you, not the other way around. And so I'll continue to take the lessons learned that I've experienced, not only as the North Atlantic Division, but previously as the Pacific Ocean Division Commander, and try to do what I can to manifest those changes that benefit all of you. But my observations, resilient, agile, professional, responsive workforce, no matter what the circumstances are, even the current circumstances that we're operating in today. the fact that we stepped up and we served really as a lighthouse in a turbulent storm over the last 3 months, serving as a beacon of hope for the rest of the communities. It's tremendous to me to see the current reputation that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers maintains today, and it has grown substantially. And we want people to join our ranks because of what we've been able to do on behalf of what I know is a very grateful nation, based on what all of you have done, what you continue to contribute each and every day, no matter how hard the task. Like I said, we could find ourselves in weeks or in the next couple of months under a pandemic situation, in a hurricane, responding in only a way that we can because of all of you, your technical expertise, your resilience, your agility, your professionalism. I could not be more proud to be a part of this organization. And it's really because of what all of you have done. And all I strive to do is make it better. Everywhere I go, I just strive to make my foxhole better wherever that foxhole is, no matter what the scope of that is. The relationships, our partnerships, and certainly on behalf of all of you, my number one responsibility to the people whom I serve with and for. How do I make your lives a little bit better? Your work-life balance, your life-work balance, your professionalism, your education, your training, your leader development. How do we make things better? And most importantly, to make it matter. Why do we do what we do? Task and purpose, right? The task, okay, we all understand what the task is. We may not always understand how to do it, but that's where your creativity and innovation just it takes off like a NASA Tesla rocket ship, to use that recent analogy. It's amazing to me to watch how creative all of you can be. And the creativity doesn't generate from this level. It generates from all of you out there on the ground every day doing things that only you can do. You just inspire me every day. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to travel to Connecticut and visit multiple sites in the state. And whether it was at the Stratford, Stamford hurricane barrier, Thompson reservoir, dry reservoir, the park rangers that I'm just so incredibly proud of, our ops folks, all across the portfolios, civil works, mill programs, international, interagency services, environmental, regulatory. It does not matter where you sit, how proud I am of you, and what you're capable of doing. And just the goodwill and nature of you wanting to make things better than the way you found them, which you don't find in every organization. And so my hat's off to you. I am so grateful to be a part of you, and I would encourage others to join our ranks. And what better time to do so during times of crisis, like I said, when you're seen as a pillar in a storm with a light or a beacon on top, guiding others to safety in only the way that we can. And it isn't just because it's the U.S. government doing so. It's because you all care, and you care about what you do, and I'm grateful for that. As I look back over the time, there's just so much going on, and I can't capture everything. I look at the times of crisis when you just responded during times like Hurricane Michael, Florence, Dorian, in fact, wildfires. Several of you went to Typhoon Suto off of Guam, in Saipan, Tinian, Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas. And we send teams all over the place, around the world in response. We provide technical assistance across Europe and Africa. We have one of the largest vessel communities. We just recently repaired and are on our way to designing a new Dredge McFarland, and all the other numerous vessels that we use for recovery and debris removal that are so important. Just watching a ton, I don't know how many, 20-ton whale carcass get carted out of the New York harbor by one of our vessels and our crews. A shout out to them for doing things that only you can do, that have done in support of the U.S. Coast Guard and so many others that I'm confident are grateful for your efforts. are watching, sadly, helicopters, whether they're New York Police Department or tourist helicopters that splash down in the East River and have to be removed or evacuated, or the services that we provide on behalf of the port authorities around the eastern seaboards. The partnerships with, and I could go on, it's a language of its own. The Missile Defense Agency, NDA, what we do with the European Deterrence Initiative, the European Infrastructure Consolidation Programs, the National Security Agency, the Department of Agriculture, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, the Washington Headquarters Service, unique missions like the Washington Aqueduct. I mean, it's incredible. And there's so many things that I don't discover until you draw me in. And it's not because there's problems, it's just because of the tremendous collaborative teamwork and integration that you all perform that go above and beyond what your professional expertise might be. You have the ability to bring others in, drive and improve situational understanding, common understanding, and achieve goals and objectives through just going back to the basics and focusing in on those things that are most important. It's my responsibility and other senior leaders to minimize and reduce those distractions that prevent you from doing your jobs more effectively and more efficiently, and then providing you with the resources that you require to protect you and to allow you to deliver the program. So with that, I am going to close on this town hall. The next opportunity that I might be able to talk to all of you is for those of you that may dial in on July 15th, when we hold and I should say the Chief of Engineers, currently still Lieutenant General Todd Semonite, until the confirmation is approved for Major General Scott Spellman. The Chief of Engineers will preside over the change of command between myself and Brigadier General Thomas Tigner. And Tom and I will stand on the podium 6 feet apart, probably with our masks on, and do the right thing through the ceremony, broadcasting through a venue very much like this one, to welcome certainly the new commander and allow me to say my goodbyes and thank yous once again to all of you. It's been an honor, and it continues to be an honor to serve with and for you through and up until the time that I depart. I thank you again for what you all do each and every day. And with that, I will say goodbye and look forward to talking to all of you when our paths next cross. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Little list.